What do you do to make your LinkedIn profile the kind of profile that headhunters, recruiters, hiring managers want to engage with?
You want to be a thought leader in your niche. Let's say you're in finance and you want to be leveling up in the finance world and corporate. Well, you better start educating people about finance and positioning yourself as an expert. And guess what? Social media is a transferable asset. So as you're doing this, you are essentially growing your equity online. So if you decide one day to become a consultant or become an entrepreneur, already you have this built-in audience that's yours.
Right. So it's not enough to just treat LinkedIn like a resume, right?
No.
That's what I hear you're saying.
I think everybody has to be a content creator. I think that you will be getting paid more. You will get more visibility from recruiters. You become suddenly more desirable because you're seen as more of an expert. You have more credibility.
Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining me today on HerMoney, where we talk about personal finance and how money impacts almost everything in our lives. However you feel about LinkedIn, there is no denying that having a profile, a good one, is important. According to Forbes, LinkedIn is an essential platform, not only to establish a professional online presence, but also to be able to showcase your skills and your accomplishments. There are almost 1 billion, that's a B, users and counting on LinkedIn, and it's the #1 platform that recruiters, hiring managers, and other professionals use to find candidates. Even if you're not looking for a job, it is always nice to hear from recruiters, and there is no harm in taking the time to chat with them. Unless you work for me, then please do not take the time to chat with them. Who knows, though? You may realize that the job they're reaching out about comes with higher pay, more flexibility, or something else you didn't know you were craving in the workplace. Having an up-to-date LinkedIn profile not only means that you'll stand out more to recruiters and they'll reach out to you more frequently, but also that you are making the effort to put your best foot forward when people Google your name, because believe me, LinkedIn is one of the first things that they're going to see. When you're ready to start your search, there are a few things that you should do to help get noticed, such as changing your LinkedIn badge to open to work, updating your about section, and including a professional headshot. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. My guest today, Hala Taha, is one of LinkedIn's biggest influencers. She's got over 224,000 followers, 8 million post views every month, and she is here to help us unlock the LinkedIn algorithm, establish our personal brands, and grow our LinkedIn following. She is also the host of the Young and Profiting podcast, which is not only fabulous, but frequently ranked as one of the top business podcasts. She is also CEO of Yap Media, a business podcast network with a full-service social media and podcast marketing agency for top podcasters, celebrities, and CEOs. Hello, welcome to the show. Nice to see you.
Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me a little bit about you, your origin story. I know you worked in the radio business for years before you went to business school and started Young and Profiting.
Yeah, I feel like I've been in this space, honestly, since I was 18 years old. I actually dropped out of college to take a full-time internship to basically be Angie Martinez's apprentice on Hot 97, which at the time was the #1 hip-hop and R&B station in the country, and the Angie Martinez Show was the #1 radio show in the entire country. And so I essentially was Angie Martinez's apprentice for several years. Then I ended up getting a lot of pressure from my family. I come from a family of doctors, and to have been, a college dropout working at a radio station for free wasn't really the ideal success for my parents. So I went back to school and I started a blog. And around when I started a blog, it was 2010. It was really hot. I saw an opportunity, and within 3 months while I was in college, I built one of the most popular hip hop and R&B sites. And I recruited all these women to help me blog. I had about 150 girls in and out of this organization that worked for free for me. And we called ourselves the Sorority of Hip Hop. And I was the president of the Sorority of Hip Hop. I ended up graduating school and kept on with this blog. We started to host events and parties. And before we knew it, we were getting tapped on the shoulder for a reality TV show. So MTV actually filmed us for an entire summer, and I was going to be the next Snooki. I was literally going to have the next reality TV show on MTV. Because we were a really fun group. It was like all these like women, and we had this like hip hop sorority. It was very unique. But we didn't get the show. 2 weeks before it was supposed to air, they pulled the plug. And at that point, I felt like, oh man, like I've had a really like twisty career and I better just get serious, get a real job. I went and got my MBA, got a 4.0, worked in corporate at Hewlett Packard for 4 years, got promoted a lot. And in my last year at Hewlett Packard, I started my podcast, Young and Profiting. I felt like, oh, I want to get back to radio. I want to get back to my roots. I felt like something was missing in my life, even though corporate was going so well. And then that set off on this new path of who I am today. 6 years ago, I started the podcast.
It sounds like there were, and you say this all with such a big, beautiful smile, but it sounds like there were just as many downs as up. The wanting to be the next Angie Martinez and that not happening, and the MTV show and that not happening. How did you continually pick yourself up and get yourself to move on to the next thing?
You know what? I really am a person who gets motivated by having a new idea. So I didn't get into it, but to your point, when I stopped working at Hot 97, it was devastating. Like I didn't just work for free because I wanted to work for free. I thought I was going to get a job there, and they just never gave me a job. And I'd go in every day and do a great job. You don't keep somebody around for free if they're not doing a great job for that long. And they just never gave me the opportunity. And I was so devastated because essentially I spoke up and asked for a paying job. And then I became a flight risk, and they basically cut me off. And all my friends were at the station. I had dropped out of school for the station. I would babysit Angie Martinez's kids and like never got paid $1. And then poof, one day was all gone. Like all my social media handles were Hala from Hot 97, right? So I felt like a part of me died because I had tied up my identity in this brand. Even my friends from college, like they all resented me because I left to go work at Hot 97. So it's like I gave up so much to do that, and then they just dropped me. And it was so devastating. But what got me through that was this new idea. I always say I got fired on a Thursday, and by Sunday I was working on my new idea, and that was creating this sorority of hip hop and starting this blog site. And I thought, hey, I just got screwed over for this opportunity. I feel like other young women in this industry are also getting missed over for opportunities. What if we banded together and did something together and created something new and empowered each other? And then I just started recruiting all these girls from iHeart and Def Jam and other like industry places. And we created this website together, and it got really successful really fast. And we all still to this day are really close friends, you know? And so it's just been this network. And really it was the idea of something new that kept me going and kept me to not stay in this rut. Because I could have easily just been sad and been like, oh, I'm just a failure, and just wallowed in my pity. But instead, I just thought of a new idea and just kept it moving.
Well, and you did it again with Young and Profiting. You started a new network. And what is remarkable, I think, about both the sorority of hip hop and Young and Profiting is you clearly learned you were going to be the owner. Like nobody else was going to be in charge of this. Nobody was going to be able to tell you that you could not have the job ever again because you created your own job. And now Young and Profiting is essentially a roadmap to help other people create their own jobs. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So my podcast, I interview the brightest minds in the world. It's a top entrepreneurship podcast. And my goal is just to help, to your point, help other people become their own boss. I know from my own experiences, I'm a petite woman who looks about 10 years younger her age. I look way younger than I really am. And I just remember, like, in certain organizations, at Hewlett Packard, for example, I did great because they had a female CEO. It's a very old company with really strong values, and things went smoothly there. But other organizations, like, for example, I worked at Disney Streaming Services, and that's actually where I ended up deciding to completely become an entrepreneur. And it was a newer company. Basically, Disney merged with a tech company, and they had no values. And it was a total boys club. And suddenly I was this person who was 10 years experience being treated like an intern again. I felt like I was back at Hot 97. And I decided, like, hey, like, I'm definitely not doing this again. I don't need to be anyone's intern. I know my value. I'm just going to work for myself, build my own equity instead of building somebody else's brand, right? I decided that even before I worked at Disney, because I started Young and Profiting at Hewlett Packard, and I basically started my brand as a side hustle. I didn't jump right into it. I basically grew it on the side, and then when I was ready, I took it full time.
You and I talked for your podcast earlier, and I've had a similar situation. I feel like I had side hustles my whole life and took them full time when they had enough time to germinate, to let me know that actually they would be sufficient to support me, support my family, eventually support other people. Yet you've been really honest about the fact that it's a bit of a rocky road, entrepreneurship. What do you have to be aware of before you decide to take a flyer?
I would say, to your point, you got to make sure that your idea is actually something that people want. I think that a lot of the times entrepreneurs come to me with ideas. Like, I remember one girl, I was like, I do like webinars all the time. And she's like, hey, I'm putting out an app so that you can have a theme song based on your astrology sign. And I was like, has anyone ever told you that they wanted that? Did you get any sales yet? Have you been doing this before you started an app? Are you creating songs for people? Do you have any demand for this? Because I don't know if there's enough of a market for people who want a theme song for their astrology sign. You know what I'm saying? And I get a lot of these really kind of outlandish ideas when I'm like, whoa, like, you've got to actually solve a problem if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. And I feel like a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to do my passion, what I'm passionate about. And it's really not about you. It's about who you're serving. What problems are you actually going to solve? And is there a demand for that? And you've got to test it out first before you go fully into it. I know with my company and my social media agency, I was making, $100,000 a month before I even had a logo or a website. That's the kind of things you should be doing. Like, what can you sell without any sort of investment?
The other road that I've often seen to entrepreneurship is not necessarily reinventing something, not inventing something new, but being able to do it better than it's being done right now, being able to show some sizable improvement. I've had a lot of people again come to me and say, well, I make the best brownies, I make the best cookies. Everybody says my barbecue sauce is gonna rock the world. And you've got to have some proof points before you hang out a shingle, invest some money, start marketing, trying to go forward.
I totally agree. You've got to make sure that whatever you're doing is wanted in the market, and also there's some sort of difference that what you're doing, nobody can get it anywhere else. Something else that we talked about on my podcast when you came on was the fact that both me and you sort of skill stacked to become entrepreneurs, and we took all of our skills to then put together an offering to the world.
Define that, because it's not a term that I had ever heard before or have used with my audience. So tell them what it is.
Sure. So skill stacking is something that I learned from Scott Adams. So Scott Adams is the creator of the Dilbert cartoon, which is one of the most syndicated, popular cartoons in the world. And it's basically this cartoon. It's a funny cartoon about a guy in business. Okay. Now, Scott Adams, he wasn't the best cartoonist or drawer in the world. He wasn't the funniest comedian in the world, the funniest man in the world. He wasn't even the most experienced with business. But he put together a bunch of good skills and he combined them to create an offering that nobody else could replicate and nobody else could do better. And he became one of the most popular cartoonists in the world, right? So I think about with my podcast. When I started my podcast, I was really good at social media. I had a production background. I could do audio editing. I could do video editing. I could write. I had all these skills that I put together and then became one of the most popular podcast hosts in the world. So I feel like people need to understand you don't need to be the best at anything anymore. You need to have a wide range of skills that you stack together in a specific way and you create your offering to the world. I did the same thing with my podcast network. Now I have the #1 business and self-improvement podcast network, and I get other podcaster sponsorships. And it's because I've acquired all these different skills myself as a podcaster, getting sales, growing my shows, recruiting podcasters, and I just combined all these skills to create my network. So I feel like it's a really smart way to think about entrepreneurship. It's not about inventing something new necessarily, especially in this digital world where a lot of what we do is like services. It's what are the skills that you can really put together to create something that only you can uniquely do.
Not just entrepreneurship, but I actually think it's very useful in selling yourself to the next job. If you work in an industry where the need for your services has faded. I grew up in the magazine industry. Try getting a job in the magazine industry these days. There are very few magazines. It's difficult. But if you think of yourself as a content creator, and that content can live in magazines, but also online, on video, on a podcast, all of a sudden the doors open to you. And if you expand your reach even further and realize that there are corporations that have needs internally and externally for all sorts of content, all of a sudden you're a journalist and you can go anywhere you want to go. That's the kind of stuff people have to understand how to put onto their LinkedIn profile. Now, we started the show by talking about how you are brilliant at LinkedIn, which is absolutely true. So I mentioned at the top of the show, you are one of LinkedIn's top voices. How'd you grow your following, and what kind of opportunities have come about because of that reach?
Oh my gosh, LinkedIn was the starting point of all my success. If I can attribute one thing to my success as a podcaster, as a CEO, it would be LinkedIn. I actually started my LinkedIn journey when I started my podcast. And I was looking at the different social media platforms. This was 6 years ago. And I was thinking, Instagram, I have a little bit of a following, but there's not that much organic reach. Everybody really just cares about what I'm wearing, if I look pretty or not. And I want to talk about something meaningful. Like my show is nerdy and it's going to be about careers. And at the time, I didn't even know it was going to be about entrepreneurship. I thought it was just going to be for like young professionals. And so I thought my audience is really going to be on LinkedIn. And I realized I was basically running LinkedIn profiles for HP and other companies. And I knew how to hack that algorithm. And so I decided I was just going to start being consistent. I realized that there was a wide open window. People were not using LinkedIn as personal accounts. There was very few content creators. Even till this day, there's 135 million daily active users that consume content on LinkedIn, and less than 6% of them are original content creators. Lots of people reading that means, and very little posting original content, their own content. So I saw that opportunity and I just jumped on it and I posted every day and I tried to stand out in the feed. And really the way that I stood out is by talking about podcasts. I remember when I first started on LinkedIn, people were like, why are you talking about your podcast? This is a professional platform for jobs. And I didn't listen to anyone. I just, there's no rules to social media. It's used as a distribution platform that's free where you could do whatever you want. So I just kept posting about my podcast. And then I became the most popular podcaster on LinkedIn and leveraged that to grow my show.
What is it about a particular LinkedIn post that makes it popular, right? Everybody has a theory about, well, this is what makes a TikTok go viral. This is what makes a reel go viral. What is it about a good LinkedIn post that it has that others don't?
There's so many factors that go into this, but I would say it's more about how you post on LinkedIn than what you post. All right. So, LinkedIn, like I said, is a completely hackable algorithm. Every action on LinkedIn every engagement is a viral action. And what people don't realize is that every viral action is weighted differently on LinkedIn. So we've assigned weights to these actions at Yap Media. So, for example, a like is 1 point, a comment is 2 points, a long comment is 2.5 points, a share is 4 points, a share with a caption is 4.5 points. And so the more shares that you get, actually, the more viral that you go. You could get like thousands of likes, thousands of comments, and you might not even get a lot of impressions or views outside your first connections because it's not the highest weighted viral actions. Shares are the highest weighted viral actions. So everything you do needs to be optimized for shares. And what gets shared right now on LinkedIn is pictures with your face on it. People like the whites of your eyes, the whites of your teeth. And that's why you see really long, it's called 4x5 poster graphics that take up a lot of real estate in the feed, photographs of people and influencers, people and the influencers that have repeated their face over and over again. People basically auto engage that. And that's the most thing that goes viral. It's pictures of influencers on LinkedIn. Okay. LinkedIn also has features that from time to time they're promoting. So like for a period of time, polls were going viral because it was a new feature that they were putting out. Then everybody was doing polls and LinkedIn became like a poll platform and LinkedIn pulled back and then suddenly polls were doing terrible, right? Now LinkedIn is starting to push videos again. For a while, they had a stance. They're not going to be competing with Reels and TikTok. Suddenly now they're starting to push videos again. So you've got to keep tabs on what's hot or not. But right now, photographs, definitely the clear winner. Polls are doing well again. Vertical videos, especially videos that stand out in the feed that are engaging with the sound off. If you think about LinkedIn, most people are scrolling with the sound off. They have jobs. So
Right.
They're on LinkedIn in their job, during their job, and they're not watching videos with the sound on. So that means your videos need to be engaging with the sound off and need to make sense, have captions, or just be like somebody running a race or kids dancing or something that's still engaging with the sound off. So those are just some of the tips. I could go on and on about the algorithm and more tips if you'd like.
Well, what I'm wondering actually is how does this all translate into getting the next job or getting the next client or getting the next piece of business?
So, very good question. So let's start with clients and then we can talk about job opportunities. So when it comes to clients, really, the whole point of social media is to be able to target your audience in mass. That is the point of marketing, finding your audience in mass. LinkedIn is by far the best platform out there to find your audience in mass. There's ways to find them based on their personal attributes and the inputs that they put in their profiles. And there's also ways to find them based on the behaviors that they take on LinkedIn. So if we're thinking about all the different attributes that somebody has in their profile, essentially LinkedIn is like a Google. And you've got a profile page where everybody has all these keywords. They're inserting their past companies. They're talking about what they do for a living, and there's multiple keywords for that. They have their titles on there. They have their location on there, their past schools on there. These are all things that are searchable on LinkedIn. So if you know that your target client is CMOs of tech companies, you can literally search for that on LinkedIn and find a list of people who are CMOs on tech companies that you can invite to your network and start engaging with, right? So there's lots of ways that you can search based on the different keywords. There's free keyword search where you can literally search any keyword that's on anyone's profile, which is an amazing tool, okay? So that's based on the inputs that they have in their profile, what you can search on. You can also find people en masse based on the behaviors they take. So LinkedIn has events that people sign up to. So for example, if I'm selling my LinkedIn Masterclass course, I'm gonna go look up every single social media event because I know those people are interested in learning about social media. I can see who registered for those events and then start inviting them to my network, DMing them, and so on. So you can see what groups people sign up for. and start searching by keyword different groups and then messaging the people who are in those groups. You can find lookalike profiles, which are basically people who have an audience that you want, not necessarily your competitors. So, for example, I grew my following by essentially stealing Gary Vee's following. I saw Gary Vee, and people call me the female Gary Vee. And I thought anybody who has who likes his podcast, who likes his motivational content, his marketing advice, they're going to like my stuff too. We literally talk about the same things. So I know that his audience is the same demographic and the same interests as my audience. So I went on his profile and I saw anybody who likes and comments on his posts would be interested in my content. So I started to invite them one by one. Hey, I noticed that you liked Gary Vee's content. If you want similar content like this, please join my network. I'd love to provide value on your feed. Then they started to join my network, and little did I know there was a lot more to that going on than just inviting people to my network. DMing, I was talking about viral actions before. DMing is even the most viral action aside from shares. People are 85% more likely to see your next post on their feed if you DM them and they DM you back. So what I was doing is essentially creating a flywheel effect. I was bringing people to my network. I was DMing them something really sweet and engaging when nobody else was doing anything like that. They would DM me back and then start seeing my content, and suddenly I would be going viral with all of Gary Vee's fans, right? Then I did that with Tony Robbins and Marie Forleo. And then I started doing that for my clients and making them go viral, right? So that's the type of stuff that I was doing on LinkedIn. The other thing that I'll say in terms of getting clients and these lookalike profiles is that essentially when you're doing or let me switch gears here. When you're posting your own content on LinkedIn, okay, you can take a similar approach. The people who are liking and commenting on your posts are essentially raising their hand, and it's called permission-based marketing. They took the first action. That's another behavioral action that you can target people on LinkedIn, people who actually engage on your content. Now you have permission to DM them without looking spammy or salesy. Hey, I noticed that you liked this content about LinkedIn. I'd love to invite you to my free webinar on the topic. And everyone's just going to say, thank you. No one's going to say, get the hell out of my DMs, because they took the first action, right? They gave you permission to engage with them.
If you're somebody who isn't necessarily marketing anything except yourself for a job, is the strategy different? I mean, what do you do to make your LinkedIn profile the kind of profile that other people, headhunters, recruiters, hiring managers, want to engage with?
It's not any different, okay? The only difference is you have an advantage because you don't have to be salesy. So if you are in any industry, you want to be a thought leader in your niche, okay? So you want to put out educational content about your niche. You also want to put out motivational content because that's something that everybody can relate to that's going to make you go viral with a broad audience. But if you want to specifically focus on your niche and grow as, like, let's say you're in finance and you want to be leveling up in the finance world and corporate, well, you better start educating people about finance and positioning yourself as an expert. And guess what? Social media is a transferable asset. So as you're doing this and you're not selling anything, you are essentially growing your equity online. So if you decide one day to become a consultant or to step out and start a side business or become an entrepreneur, already you have this built-in audience that you built during your corporate time that's yours, right?
Right. So it's not enough to just treat LinkedIn like a resume, right?
No.
That's what I hear you're saying. It's not enough to update your skills section and change your profile picture, although that's probably not a bad idea if you haven't done it for a while. But you're basically saying everybody has to be a content creator.
I think everybody has to be a content creator. I think that it is to your advantage and you will be getting paid more. You will get more visibility from recruiters. You will become a more desirable candidate if they see that you have some sort of following. You become suddenly more desirable because you're seen as more of an expert. You have more credibility.
What if you're just starting? I mean, I get this if you are out of school 10 years, you've built a little brand equity. What if you're 23 years old, you're just out of school or you didn't finish school, you want that first job? Can you go too far with this?
No, because there's all different types of relationships that you can have with your audience. So being an expert is just one relationship. So you could be a reporter, you could be a hype man or a hype woman. You can be a community builder, right? You don't have to be an expert. So for example, when I started on LinkedIn, I didn't consider myself an expert. I was a reporter. I would interview experts and then share my learnings through my podcast. And it wasn't until I had my own business and I started going viral. And then I was, okay, I'm a LinkedIn expert. I'm a podcast expert. I'm an entrepreneurship expert. But at first I was just a reporter interviewing experts and just sharing the information, right? So you could do, if you were like, let's go back to the finance example. You could interview other finance executives. You could share blogs and share what you learned. You don't have to come out with original content. You can just distribute content and share what you learned, right? So I don't think you need to have any sort of experience to get started. You just need to be open with where you're at, not be something that you're not, not try to be something that you're not yet. And just realize that you can decide what kind of relationship you have with your audience depending on where you're at in your career.
If there is a hiring manager out there, and I say this because I am married to a guy who was a recruiter for 20 years. They use LinkedIn differently than other people. They have an upgraded version. They've got lots of tools that allow them to really search and parse it in a very specific way to help them find the people that they want to find. How do you make sure that you're one of those people? How do you make sure that your page, your profile is just going to pop?
So keywords are so important on LinkedIn, okay? For both content, we didn't even get into it, but everything's becoming more about interest and relevancy, okay? And when it comes to these recruiting tools and being able to search profiles, they're only going to be able to search what you actually put on your profile. So that means that your title needs to be super clear. Your bio needs to have lots of keywords, really showcase what you do. Every single experience that you have needs to be titled with keywords that you think recruiters would be searching for. The descriptions of your jobs should be packed with keywords that you think recruiters would be searching for. Even your content, your post content should include a lot of those different keywords. So you really got to think strategically about how you're infusing your profile with keywords. The other thing I'll say is make sure you have a really good profile picture. One where you're smiling, one where people can see your face, where you're dressed appropriately and you look the part as well, right? People are going to be attracted. You're going to attract exactly what you look like. You want to mirror what you're trying to attract. So if you're looking for a very executive high-level position, you should look like a very high-level executive in your profile picture.
Dress for the job you want to have. That's something that my mother always said. Hala Taha, we could talk about this all day. The information is fabulous, as are you. Thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Of course, I had so much fun.
Me too. And we will send everybody to Young and Profiting to check your podcast out as well.